the data, to the vehicle data, to detect essentially the non-compliance part. Once that non-compliance is detected, then that can be very helpful in complementing the UCARIS model, because then only the non-compliant vehicles would need to rely on the authority-centric model, and it would reduce the burden of the authority-centric model to some extent as well. So need to be looked at, some suggested actions for this particular recommendation as well. Leverage, of course, there is a need for a legal basis to get the vehicle data from the vehicles. So need to look at the climate action regulations that I mentioned earlier. If the data that we collect through climate action regulations can be used, the use of this data can be extended also for UR enforcement, needs to be looked at and taken into consideration. The European Commission is also in the process of now, there is an initiative on access to vehicle data, functions and resources. This is a part of the Data Act. So they are currently in the process of doing this. This could also be an opportunity to establish the necessary basis to gain access to data for the purposes of UR enforcement. So need to be looked at as well. Then establishment of a collaboration with vehicle manufacturers. This is important because under the safety-related traffic information regulation, there is already an ecosystem that exists which allows vehicle manufacturers to share the data with different stakeholders, and probably this could also be mimicked for the purposes of UR enforcement. So an ecosystem for UR enforcement could also be established. So needs to be considered seriously. And also the smart tachograph that I was talking about earlier is evolving. There is a version 2 of the smart tachograph, and soon there will be a version 3 as well. There is a technology called the DSRC, which is dedicated short-range communication technology. Please excuse me, I'm not very technically sound, but this technology is being used by enforcers at the moment for enforcing other regulations, the driving and resting time regulation, for example, and this is upcoming, being taken up on the enforcer's side. So this could also be looked into, and if tachograph is already used as a tool to enforce different regulations, maybe a use case of UVARs could also be added to it. So all this is a suggested action from our side towards the recommendation that use vehicle connectivity and evolution of devices for UR enforcement, again to complement the authority-to-authority data sharing model. And I've covered a lot of information, but we will also be producing a report. As I said, the report will go further into details. We have recommendations in there on the steps required for the uptake of all these different solutions that I mentioned at the EU level. It will also include information on how different regulations that I discussed need to be amended or changed in order to provide the correct legal basis. So yeah, that is something that is forthcoming. I invite you to have a look at it. And with this, I'll conclude. I'll probably pass the floor to Remy now for the concluding remarks, yes. Unless there are any questions. For me, yes, please.
Yeah, just a quick question, Thomas from Eurocities. You mentioned the climate action regulations in your recommendations. So you're referring, for instance, to data like onboard fuel measurement data. I mean, data on the consumption of vehicles, for instance, that could be relevant for.
Yes. So there are 3 or 4 different regulations under the climate action. Some for the light duty vehicles, some from the heavy duty vehicles, and they oblige vehicle manufacturers, also member states, to collect a lot of data, which is to monitor CO2 emissions. And a lot of this data, I tried to go through these data sets, could also be relevant for the purposes of checking, emission standards of vehicles for the purposes of URs. So yeah, there's a long list of this data in each of these regulations. In the report, we've tried to be a bit more precise and tried to provide the links of these specific regulations. There are like 4 of them or 5 of them, if I'm not wrong. So yeah, there is a lot of data that's being collected. There's a database at the EU level that exists. I think DG Environment is managing that. Yes, and yes. So, but the use of this data needs to be extended. For the moment, it's just for CO2 monitoring. So, Yes, please.
Yeah, thank you. No, very good list of recommendations there. Would I be right in thinking, though, that if you were able to amend the Cross-Border Enforcement Directive, which of course is currently made member of safety, or the Electronic Tolling Directive,
Yes.
then actually you wouldn't need quite a lot of the other suggestions, and you wouldn't need sort of the driver-centric recommendations either, because
Yes and no.
would more or less work then.
Yes and no. I would say yes to the extent that UCARIS is something that is already in place and is being used. No, because the complexity of enforcing URs is not so easy to manage, because as we've seen at the city level itself, there are different processes. And I think to manage that complexity, the city authorities should get all the help that they need to be able to get the information that they need for the purposes of enforcing UR. So I wouldn't just confine ourselves to one particular kind of solution, but complement it with different approaches. And so I would also recommend that other approaches are looked into quite seriously, because it would in fact help the authority-centric data sharing a lot, because the number of exchanges would be then limited to only non-compliant vehicles. So that would be my answer. Yeah. Any other questions? Yes? No.
No, I think we can try to prove that we can catch up the delays, and we will be 5 minutes late. So I hope Remy helps me to.
I'll help you, yes. So 5 minutes, so thank you very much to Remy Justo from COP. So the easy part for me, so first to thank you all here for being here today. Thank you to DG Move, Isabelle and Jürgen for your support, to also our colleagues at the UN, so Robert Novak and Karel Hoffman, who's from Belgium, representing this group that Marusha worked with on the signs. So thank you all. Thank you to the cities, Maria, for the coordinations. Thank you very much. Now, just as concluding remarks, I think this is the role of concluding remarks, is to take a few steps back, so in 3 minutes, top. What I'd just like to say is, we would, and we did, I think, throughout this project, which is soon ending in the course of the project, but we will keep on working on this beyond the project, is to say that we would like to consider, and we did, UVARs in a larger framework. So while we're trying to address a question here, or two questions, information and data sharing across the EU, would we try to do, and I think this is still to be done, is to consider that UVAR is one part of a very dynamic road transport sector, in particular in relation to cities. We're in police today, so it's not for nothing. So thank you also for police and the interaction there. UVAR, yes, needs a specific answer or hybrid answers, as John said, so we need to see what is the best combination. But we also need to look at what is UVARs in relation to different aspects of road transport today. So a few are the transition from still physical 20th century documentation to digital, connectivity, including vehicles, the role of citizens today, and the sharing of information in general. What does it mean to share information, in particular in relation to this, let's say, classical triangle of road transport, which is a driver, citizen, a vehicle used, and then an authority or a city, so a larger environment against which or with which this person is moving across the EU. So I think it's important that while we are all here to find a solution to UVARs, we consider that the solution has to be well thought in connection to what exists today. So we saw UCARIS, of course, what could be done in the future with different solutions, such as the one from IN Group, and to try to find a balance with all this. So what is to be done today with existing systems, unlock possibilities for the future. So for instance, if there's a change in the legal text to be done, maybe there's a way to do this that it does not limit itself to only UVARs, but in fact unleashes or opens possibilities for different types of elements in the road transport sector, including in the urban sector. We're also saying this from the point of view of CORT, which is working with national authorities in charge of control, and they are in charge of many, many things. In commercial transport and private vehicles, they have to look at the whole scheme. So they are looking at different types of documents, elements, and we need to find a way to make their life, let's say, easy. We talk a lot about the citizens and the drivers, and we all want to make our own lives easy, but also we need to think about the authorities and how they can manage all these documents and trust these documents. So that's the balance I think we need to find. And then lastly, and then I'll stop here, collaboration. So this is something that we do also in CUP. We've done in the project a lot with the partners, but also with you. I think the project was also very good in collaborating with YesU, but also and trying to push a little bit maybe DG Move and looking into the different units of DG Move, because as Giant said, there are many things happening in different units, road readiness, connectivity, and so on. And everything has a link with UVAR, because UVAR is, as Giant just said, complex. So we're trying to use that window of opportunity to try to connect a few dots. So we may have made the picture more complex. So you may need more aspirin now, but we hope that at least the mapping is there, the tools are there, and now the problem, as Morpheus and Matrix said, the problem is choice. So there are different elements, and we need to combine them today. So thank you very much. We'll keep you posted on the results, send all the information to everyone so it's shared. And thank you for today. Thank you, Maria, for the coordination.
Before we go, we have just one last announcement. Niklas?
Yeah, I need your attention for 2 more minutes. It's more also an opportunity for those who are also joining online. We are going to have the Reveal project that was mentioned a couple of times already today, and it's basically also focusing on UVAR. As I said, it's the largest project working on this topic, and we would like to let you know that we have a lot of content on the homepage, which you're going to see in a minute, the URL, and it's also that we are going to have the final event going to take place in November in London. So you should check civitas-reveal.eu, and on the 8th and the 9th of November, there's going to be the final conference where there's going to be the entire project explained, but they're also going to be highlighting the different stones or blocks that are included in the project, that they're offering a lot of content, how to create an UVAR, how to do the enforcement, but also how to communicate with the audience and how to create some kind of stakeholder engagement strategy. And there are lots of aspects that are very important for cities who are not yet at the stage for the digitalization process, but also are at the beginning. So when you check this homepage, there are going to be some information, and you need to send emails to our colleagues, and then you are getting an invitation, because it's an invitation-based event, but you could still sign up. And it's a physical event, so you would need to take some time to travel to London, but I think it's a great opportunity for all of you here in the room and online as well. And those are my concluding remarks. I hope you had a good time here at Polis, and for those who are here, enjoy your lunch.
Thank you. So thanks for all the organization from Polis side, and especially Carolina that took care of everything regarding the organization of this workshop. And I hope you had a pleasant morning and keep in touch with UVAR exchange outwards. Thank you for participating.
And thank you for all the ones online.
Yes.